Hey guys, it's Courtney. Today we're going to be using the Buttercup stamp set by Simon Says Stamp to create a very simple card, making lots of mistakes. So I quickly put together this card here, and this is kind of the layout and what I was going for. And you can kind of see as I go along here how the plan changes as I make a mistake. So a first mistake that happens to me and probably any pet owner out there is stamping your sentiment, and I'm stamping with black dye ink by Simon, and having a piece of cat hair or fur stuck to the stamp. And it's hard to see on camera there, but it does not give you a very crisp image. We'll fix that in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my little buttercups here. And I'm really smushing my ink pad on purpose here so that I do not get a good impression. I kind of get a messy one. And this will happen if you press too hard or if your ink pad is overly juicy. So you can see that the lines of my stamp are not very good here. This can also happen if you have a lot of blank areas in the stamp and you smush too hard. So in order to fix my card and not have to start over, I'm going to do a little bit of paper piecing. So I took a piece of pattern paper from my huge gigantic stash of pattern paper, and I believe this is by Lawn Fawn. I can't guarantee it. I don't use pattern paper often, but I'm going to stamp my images directly onto the card panel the way I want them, but I'm also stamping them onto my pattern paper as well. And I'm going to do my coloring right on the pattern paper. In order for the pattern to show through, I'm basically only going to add the shadows. So I'm going to be using my cool gray markers here, and you can definitely use any grays here. Going in right with my darkest color, because this is pattern paper and this is not necessarily an alcohol marker safe paper, I want to prevent bleeding. So I'm going to go right in with my darkest color and just add a few little shadows where one petal is lying under another. Then I'm going in with my C3 and I'm just flicking out that color just a little bit. And then finally I'll go in with my C1 and I'm flicking this out even further, pretty much not fading to white, but fading to, I guess, nothing because it's pattern paper. For the centers of the flowers, I'm going to stick to some oranges. So I brought out some YR markers, again, going right in with that darkest color first to prevent bleeding. Just going to outline the outer edge of that circle, then fill that in with start to fill it in with the mid-tone and just leave the very center for the highlight. Now, I wasn't liking the way my flower was looking. It looked too gray to me. So I'm going to take the Y11, which is a very light color, and I already have my shading down with the grays, so I don't have to do any more shading. But you can always change or alter the color of any colored image by just going over it with another color, being you already have your shading down. So once all of my coloring was done for all of my flowers, I went ahead and fussy cut those out, and I cut them right along the black lines. So when you're fussy cutting something, you want to kind of hold the scissors somewhat steady or straight with your dominant hand and twist and turn the paper with your less dominant hand. And you want to make sure that you're working with a smaller piece of paper. I wasn't going to use that whole 6x6 sheet while I'm trying to do this, so I cut it down and then I'll cut around my images. So next, once all of my cutting was done, I'm going to take a water-based marker, and I think this is by Stampin' Up. I have no idea where it came from, but somehow it became part of my stash. And I'm just going around the outer edges of all of my cut out images from the back, because you can see that sometimes the marker slips, and I'd rather have it slip on the back portion rather than the front and have to redo all of that all over again. Next, I went ahead and adhered all of my little flowers down onto my card panel directly over the stamped images that we had used just for placement. I'm using a little bit of wet glue on the back of the image and kind of placing that directly over the black outline. And I find this to be easiest. Now, I will show you, if you put the glue down on the card panel, it can be a little bit more difficult than for me anyway. But you can see that I have a little bit of glue that squished out, and I didn't completely line this one up. I have a little bit of that outline showing, and the glue had dried too much where I couldn't move it. So I'll fix that in just a minute. And so I'm placing down this fourth one here, and now I'm going to go ahead and fix out those lines with a white gel pen, which is in my opinion, a must-have. It fixes so many mistakes, and you'll see that throughout the video, that it's for just a couple of dollars, you can save a whole lot of cards. Now I have a little smudge up there, and honestly, that was not on purpose. And I'm just using a sand eraser to fix that up, and you go very, very lightly, and you may have to do this a few times, but it will just remove the very top coat of the paper gradually. So you don't want to press too hard, or else you're just going to rip your paper. So I also fixed up that sentiment, and we'll move on to the rest of the sentiment. I am taking a scrap piece of black cardstock here. I treated that with my anti-static tool, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp down my sentiment with Versamark ink. First time I stamped it, it was super crooked, and I knew it was going to be a teeny tiny skinny sentiment, so I didn't want to have to cut it down too much. So I just flipped that paper around and re-stamped my images or my sentiment after treating that with my anti-static tool. I'll go ahead and sprinkle on some Hero Arts white embossing powder. And now I got a very good impression and good coverage with my embossing powder, but pretend that we didn't. So I'm going to take a paintbrush and just take off that lower portion of the P at the end of the word. And we're just going to pretend that I didn't stamp it good. Going to go ahead and heat set that, and I'm going to trim this down again, like I said, into a very teeny tiny skinny little strip. And in order to fix that P, or any areas that maybe we didn't get a great impression with the embossing, I'm going to bring out that white gel pen again, and I'm going to just finish that letter basically. And it won't give you as much dimension as the rest of the embossed area, but it will fill in that letter and nobody will ever know the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere my panel onto a black panel that is cut just slightly larger than my card panel, but a little bit smaller than an A2 size card, just to give that a little bit more. And next we're going to move on to, oh, there I have another smudge, but this time it wasn't necessarily a smudge and I wasn't able to take it up. So I'm going to first put this down onto my A2 size card base here. And in order to fix that, you can see that in the first card I used some black Nuvo drops, which I'm going to use again, but I'm going to change my placement a little bit in order to cover up that smudge. Now that my glue is completely dry too, I'm going to use an adhesive eraser, which is another inexpensive tool and great to have in the craft room, just to go over that one little flower where I had my glue kind of squish out, and just going over this gently a few times will take away that adhesive. So next I'm going in with my Nuvo drops, and as some of you know, if you're not careful with the Nuvo drops, they can kind of spread a little bit, and if you're using clear, no big deal. But I'm using black here, so you'll see on my fifth one, I didn't put it down perfectly on purpose. So what I do is I take a little piece of paper towel and I kind of curl up a corner and make that back into the drop shape that I'm looking for, but it's not going to take away the color. So I let this dry for about 2 hours or so. And again, going in with my white gel pen just to go over that area to make that look like a complete drop. So that's my finished card. You'll definitely want to make sure that you have your white gel pen, your sand eraser, and your adhesive eraser. It will save you so many cards. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. Bye.